What is your town's dark secret? Part 2. My hometown was rumored to be a sunset town. There was a horn that sounded at dawn and dusk every day. Allegedly that was the signal for black people to enter and exit the town. But there were never any black people there anyway. So it's hard to know if it's true. The neighboring suburb I used to live in Sydney had been renamed Erskineville. It was interesting as all the addresses or shops would be considered to be Erskineville. But the train station was still called McDonald Town Station. I did a little digging online and it turns out that in 1800s, we had baby farmers who, for a weekly or monthly fee, would raise babies that were born from affairs or illegitimate marriages. A few years down the track, workers are digging up a yard in McDonald Town, as it was still called then, to clear a drain. And they found 2 dead babies in the drain. They investigated it further and ended up finding like 15 more. The baby farmers were living off the weekly and monthly fees they were given to take care of these babies. And they were killing them and disposing of them. As a result of these horrible events, they renamed the suburb so it wouldn't be associated with some gruesome history. I don't know why they never changed the station though. Edit, typos. In a town close to where I live there was a guy that everyone hated. And rightfully so. He would do things to people's property like burn barns, shoot their dogs, vandalize public areas, but would always somehow get out of trouble for it. One day he rolled up to a common bar that many of the town folk would stay at and in midday was shot and killed by someone from the bar in the street. The cops all questioned the people around and every one of them said they were too busy playing pool. To this day no one knows who did it and the murder is still unsolved. I believe they even made a movie over it. Edit, thanks to you/addictee who discovered the movie is in fact in broad daylight. Not a town, but a city. Our city have this sort of 50-year cycle where disaster strikes up. More or less 50 years. Actually. As I was reading through the archives as a history major student, I was shocked when I found this out. Once a great fire. Next a severe flood. Then a tidal wave. Then an earthquake. It's really a weird thing that no one talks about. My grandparents, who initially built the house I'm in now about 20 years ago, for the first few years got their dial-up internet from some dude who ran his little ISP business out of an old barn. Apparently he also had a meth business. Meth is huge in this part of Wisconsin. And when he was apparently about to be busted, burned everything down, literally, and hung himself. I remember one weekend like 10 years ago when the internet just stopped working and never came back up. I guess that was the day he pulled the plug. The whole thing was in local papers a week later. Years ago a husband and wife were having a heated argument in their basement. In a fit of anger, the husband grabbed a billiard ball from the pool table and threw it at the wife. It hit her in the head and killed her instantly. The husband then dismembered her body in their upstairs bathroom, put the parts in garbage bags, and boated them out to the river. My great-aunt was a witness and saw him leave the dock with the garbage bags in his boat and return without them. A classmate of mine now lives in the home where it happened and says you can still see the scratches in the tub from the saw the husband used. A strip joint was raided and some high-powered people were caught in huge illegal gambling activities in the back room. I was in the paper one day and nothing was ever heard about it since. No one was ever brought to trial. The principal at the small Christian school I went to was found convicted of sexually assaulting 10+ boys from ages 6 to 12. He was long gone before I went there. And I only found out about it after I graduated high school. Happened between the late 1990s and early 2000s. In my town, the Hells Angels basically buy up bars and clubs, then burn them down for insurance money. The same places have kept burning down year after year. I live in Ocala/Summerfield Fluid. I think you could probably Google the corruption around here freely. Not really a secret. But when I was in elementary school a woman got shot and died in her house in the middle of the day. They put us on lockdown because she lived close to the school. They ended up shooting the guy that killed her and I believe he died as well. It was her ex who came and shot her because she called the cops on him the night before for I believe stalking her. I hope her kids are doing okay. The Scranton Strangler. Only thing I can think of is that we had a mining disaster that killed 150 miners, Only 7 men who were working that day survived. But considering we have a monument to it in the middle of town, I don't think it really qualifies as a secret. We have thousands of unmarked graves under lawns and buildings downtown. The site of our old library was the cemetery for the poorhouse and the jail. There's 4,500 unmarked graves in that area alone. The extremely wealthy businessman who basically funded and built the town freely allowed Jeffrey Epstein to use his guest house without question to do whatever he liked. The businessman is also rumored to be a heavily closeted gay man with a liking for very young men. My hometown of Port Huron was home the only lynching of a black man in Michigan in 1889. In the early 80s a prisoner escaped from the men's institution in town. After hiding out in a vacant house for 2 days in the next town over, he entered the house neighboring his hideout and murdered 4 out of the 5 people inside. One of the deceased was a kid that was there for a sleepover. The only person still alive is the 8-year-old son of the homeowners who survived having his throat cut. A really brutal crime for an area that at the time was a quiet suburban farming community. I had a quick toilet stop while on a road trip from Perth to Geelong in Australia, and stopped at a place called Snowtown in SA. The lady who cleaned the toilets happened to be there, and without me saying a word, pointed out the vacant bank building where 8 bodies were found in barrels. I must admit that was going to be my next question. The bank building still stands and is opposite the public toilets. A woman, after suffering years of abuse from her husband, finally snapped when she learned he also sexually assaulted their daughter. She killed him, chopped him up, spread him across farms and fed some of him to livestock. She served no time. The last I knew, was married to husband number 3, and was selling insurance. A local Chinese restaurant was owned by a married couple. They had 2 young girls. Most of their time was spent there as a family. One day a news report went out about one of the girls who went missing. We were asked to check sheds/outbuildings and check for footprints on our property. Police were searching everywhere, based on details given by the couple. A couple days later, if I'm remembering correctly, they finally searched the restaurant and found the missing girl in the freezer, beaten to death. Husband blamed the wife. Wife took the blame. Husband escaped the police van escorting him to jail but didn't get far. Restaurant is now closed, and nothing has taken its place. I believe they just painted the windows/made it look like an extension of the other stores in that plaza. It's where the Zodiac killer killed his first victim. Our scumbag MP went to the Caribbean for Christmas and pre-recorded a bunch of videos to look like he was at home. Wore sweaters and had a green screen in cabinet meetings. Our province is on lockdown at the moment due to COVID. We were all told to isolate and not celebrate with members outside our household, and this dude is on a beach. We are the embarrassment of the country. I did not vote for him. His office is in my town. A lot of swingers. Apparently. I can't find M and I've looked. 2 different serial killers have killed in my town. To set things straight, I don't live in a town, but what I'm referring to is my borough of Staten Island in New York City. Okay, the first was a pedophile/child murderer named Albert Fish who operated up and down the East Coast but committed 1 confirmed murder here but several more suspected. This was the 1920s, I think. The other was Andre Rand, a serial killer who killed 2 young girls in 1972. Not to mention the ongoing mob war. In 2014 a couple was tortured, raped and murdered in the Gresham Manor housing project in Port Huron. I was 9 at the time and I remember cops swarming the neighborhood at 10 p.m. This is why we moved, because Port Huron is now one of the most dangerous cities in America. Nothing but drugs, murder and prostitution and gangs. Stay the fuck away from Port Huron, Michigan. We know Malort tastes terrible, but we continue to drink it just to see the reactions of the uninitiated. My hometown is a small town full of people who work on the adjacent military research installation. Dark secrets are kinda why the town even exists. I haven't lived in my current town long enough to be trusted with any of its dark secrets yet. A kid I went to high school with broke the leg off of those cliché metal classroom desk chairs and jabbed it into someone's neck at school and got ISD, in school detention, as his punishment. That's it. I had a gym class with him after his detention was over. Freaked me out. My town is London, so take your pick. I'm surrounded by former bomb sites. Old plague pits, and I can walk to the Tower of London from my house. The church down the road displayed the heads of executed Jacobites on its railings, and the railings of the flats opposite it are reported to be repurposed stretchers from WW2. There's lots of current and historic organized crime, and the politicians are all bent. Very few people who go to one of my local parks know that an MP was found cruising for gay sex there, and it's also where Benjamin Franklin hung out, so I doubt it was the first fumble it's seen. Not really a secret, but goddamn dark. About 60 years ago, a couple spent 2 years snatching children off the streets, murdering them and burying them on the nearby moors. They killed 5 children, and 1 body is still missing. More of a legend than a secret. If you're a man, don't swim in the lake because the princess will take your life. The story of a young girl abducted by a man she met on social media. On her way to one of the 2 high schools in town, the one I went to, they never found her body but her clothes and bag, and evidence in his car. It was said he borrowed a wood chipper from a friend earlier that week. He was arrested at the local Safeway working a shift. The Safeway I went to growing up. Just really a mindfuck. Thanks for watching.